Hermag Pumps, the leading manufacturer of canned motor pumps, is introducing advantages of canned motor pumps. Low noise. As the whole rotor assembly is surrounded by the pumped liquid, there is no direct metal-to-metal contact between the rotor and the stator. This results in significantly lower noise compared to any other pump types. Low vibrations. For similar reasons as with the low noise, canned motor pumps also exhibit very low vibrations, leading to higher reliability and longer lifetime. HPB monitor. HPB is the electronic monitor which, using its state-of-the-art technology, continuously measures the bearing wear. This allows the pump user to predict possible pump failures, therefore increasing the operation reliability even further. The HPB monitor has a visual indicator mounted directly on the pump, but can also output the 420 mA signal for remote control. As a secondary function, the HPB monitor also detects wrong direction of rotation. In case the pump rotor starts to spin in the opposite direction, HPB monitor immediately reacts. Pump disassembly. Now, let's demonstrate the simplicity of canned motor pump disassembly. Thanks to its quick and easy maintenance, usage of canned motor pumps reduces the pump downtime and maintenance cost, therefore maximizing the efficiency of overall ownership. Before the disassembly, make sure the pump is properly fixed in its position and does not move. Loosen the bolts connecting the motor to the pump casing. Slowly remove the volute casing. To remove the impeller, straighten the lock washer of the impeller bolt and remove the bolt. The impeller can now be removed from the shaft. Remove the adjusting washers in case they are present. Undo the bolts holding the front bearing housing and the gasket. Use a jack-up screw in case it is necessary. Once the front bearing housing is removed, be careful as the remaining liquid kept inside the motor may now flow out. The rotor assembly is now free to be slid out. While removing it slowly, be careful not to damage it, especially the stator and rotor liner. Place the rotor assembly into a fixed position to avoid any roll. Remove the bolts attaching the rear bearing housing to the pump motor. The rear bearing housing can now be carefully removed together with the gasket. To disassemble the front bearing, remove the shaft sleeve, thrust collar and pin by hand. Loosen the set screw holding the bearing bushing in place. The bearing bushing is now free to be removed together with the fixing plate. Repeat the same process for the rear bearing. The pump is now disassembled. Pump assembly. The pump is assembled in the reverse order to disassembly. For both the front and rear bearing housings, insert the bearing bushing with the auxiliary washer in place and tighten the set screw. Install the rear bearing housing with a gasket and tighten the bolts. For both the front and rear bearings, position the pin, the thrust collar and the shaft sleeve on the rotor shaft. Make sure the hardened surface of the thrust collar faces towards the bearing bushing. Slowly slide the rotor assembly inside the motor. Be careful not to damage it. Install the front bearing housing and tighten the bolts. Measure the rotor axial gap. Pull the rotor towards the casing end and measure the distance from the end of the shaft to the front face of the front bearing housing. Now, push the rotor towards the motor end and measure the same distance again. The difference of these two distances is the rotor axial gap. Make sure it is within the tolerance specified in the operating manual for the given motor frame size. Before installing the impeller, measure the distance between its rear face and rear hub face. Then, with the rotor assembly pulled towards the casing end, measure the distance between the front face of the front bearing housing and the front face of the thrust collar. Check the difference of these two distances is within the limits specified in the operating manual for the given motor frame size. In case it is not, use adjusting washers to fix the distance. Place the impeller key in the groove and slowly slide the impeller on the shaft. Tighten the impeller bolt and secure it with the lock washer. Position the gasket in place. Attach the volute casing to the motor flange and tighten the bolts. The pump is now fully assembled.